Mrs. Lanicia Collins-Williams, our sign language interpreter, and all of our viewers and listeners, good afternoon, and welcome to the Roundtable. I am Sherma Matthew. Today's Roundtable forms part of the government's ongoing efforts to keep the public informed and engaged with matters of national interest. We are joined today by representatives from SKN Source in the person of Ebony Brandon, SKN Newsline, Glenn Bart, Sugar City, Ralston Rankin, and ZIZ, Devon Cornelius. Kindly place all phones on silent. At this time, I will turn the floor over to Prime Minister for his opening statement. Following that, we will open the floor to questions from the media and comments or discussions. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matthew. I want to welcome the media or representatives who are here with us today, and also to recognize our sign language personnel in the person of Mrs. Williams. Good afternoon to you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, our citizens and residents, and all those who are listening at this point in time to another edition of this Roundtable, which seeks to keep our people informed. Today, I will curtail my opening statement, but delve into two significant matters, one being the CBI and the other being matters to do with national security or citizen security as a more comprehensive name. With respect to the CBI, the Citizenship by Investment Unit has successfully transitioned from a government department to an independent statutory corporation as per Citizenship by Investment Act passed on June 28, 2024. This transition is a significant milestone in our ongoing efforts to modernize and strengthen our CBI program. The Board of Governors, chaired by Mr. Calvin St. Just, has been instrumental in steering the CIU through this transition. The board has conducted a comprehensive assessment of the unit's operations and has developed, and in the process of course, developing a strategy to guide its transformation. A nationwide recruitment campaign launched on August 14 received an overwhelming response. I think of over 800 applications for 29 key positions within the CIU. This response underscores the public's confidence in the direction we are taking and their eagerness to contribute to this pivotal institution. The interview process is ongoing and is expected to conclude by end of September. Enhancing the CBI program and the restructuring of the CIU is part of a broader strategy to enhance the integrity, transparency, and efficiency of our CBI program. We aim to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis remains a leader in the global CBI market, offering a secure and attractive investment opportunities. Plans are also underway to structure and transform the Citizenship by Investment Unit following its formalization as a statutory body. And these plans, of course, would ensure that our program continue to be a top program, as mentioned before. Now, on the matter of national security, just to update, we recently had our stakeholders engagement, which took place last Friday. Our new campaign, the 90 Days Campaign for Citizen Security, a whole society responsibility, will be launched very, very soon. I can say that I just left the task force. That is it's a diverse task force to seek to implement this new approach, of course, to our citizen security matters. They are now looking at a framework, and more details will come very, very soon. So I want to thank Minister Iselin Phillip and the team that is leading on this to ensure that once and for all we implement strategies and the answers to deal with the issue of violence and crime in our society so that we can really maintain a system that is sustainable and to ensure that this never, ever becomes dormant ever again. To that end, we are setting up a department to deal with citizen security, the first of its kind in our country, so that the issue can be dealt with from a broad perspective, from a public health perspective. I know very clearly that the term public health perspective for some seems almost like there is no direct connection. But I will invite our citizens to look at violence as a disease. Just like almost any other infectious disease, violence behaves just like that. And the body of scientific knowledge in the human endeavor that deals with violence, or deal with diseases rather, is public health. And it looks at the matter from all perspectives, and of course will bring recommendations for its resolution. I want to invite us to think about COVID. COVID as a virus, it infects those who become exposed. So if persons become exposed to violence, they too can become victims and or perpetrators, because violence can be transmitted to persons. And those who are prone to become infected by violence are those, of course, who are more vulnerable, possibly because of the home, the community, or because of issues within the society that render them susceptible. It's just like having somebody with a weak immune system who would easily catch COVID. Somebody who does not have strong psychological reserve, good family support, good societal support, that person is vulnerable. In other words, the immune system to resist violence is weak and can become infected, and therefore can become a perpetrator of violence. And therefore, we understand that it can behave similar to a disease, an infectious disease, and that is why the body of scientific knowledge that can deal with this is from a public health perspective. So that is why we approach it this way. Just to bring our public up to date, in 2002, the World Bank did a study on violence, and a number of recommendations were given. That is 2002. This is 22 years later. However, within the Caribbean, those recommendations were not really implemented across the region. And it was predicted that at some point, if the measures to deal with the issue of violence are not put in place, we will end up where we are today. And that is why the whole of the Caribbean is affected. I cannot say attempts were not made, but they needed to be, of course, more comprehensive in order to have the benefits that we will see once implemented. We see studies done in different pockets, and those studies are very promising. It will work, but it has to be an all-of-society approach. To that end, that is why I invited NGOs and different community groups and persons from across our federation, and all political parties were invited. That these parties include People's Action Movement, PAM, and PAM had their representatives in their leader and deputy leader. CCM had its leader, and who is also the leader of the opposition. NRP also sent a representative. The only party that did not have a representative there was PLP. And of course, they too were invited. In the spirit of making sure all hands are on deck, we encourage the PLP to participate in this national effort so that all of us can be at the table and contribute to dealing with the issue of crime and violence, which have been plaguing our nation for many, many decades. The last thing I will say on it is that I sanctioned a study to be done by the USAID in 2020 to 2023 on crime and gang dynamics in St. Kitts and Nevis. They have presented some of the findings already, and at the national consultation, they will present an in-depth analysis. And I can say that the data suggests that we have an issue. But the data also suggests that this issue can be dealt with. And so we cannot approach this superficially or in a political partisan way. This needs the whole of society, because the data suggests it's only the whole of society that can really resolve this matter. And so I wanted to make these my opening statements and give the members of the media the opportunity to engage me, and let us have a dialogue this afternoon.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Members of the media, you may now engage with the Prime Minister. Remember, 2 questions at a time so you can give other representatives a chance to ask their questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Devon Cornelius, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. I want to continue where you ended, Mr. Prime Minister, with regards to the report that was done that focused on gang dynamics. What are some of those findings, and how do we, now that we've identified the issue, how do we aggressively tackle it?
Right, excellent question. That study was done, and what it's really showing is that the issue of gangs in St. Kitts and Nevis is pervasive. And none of the measures taken before really dealt with the matter and resolved the matter. As a matter of fact, the issue had become very, very serious, so to speak. And the data must be presented. I will say it that way because that is the crux of the matter. It means that many communities are infected with gangs. It means that many persons who you may not even suspect might be members of gangs as well. Criminal gangs. And that is a very, very serious matter. That is why when you have these type of criminal gangs in any society carrying out illegal activities and violence in different forms, connected to drug trade, and where there are drugs, there are guns. Where there are guns, we know what happened. That can proliferate in any society, what we are seeing. Not just here, but throughout the Caribbean. But you ask about the solution. And what I've presented today, when I talk about dealing with it from a public health perspective, I'm talking about a comprehensive scientific approach which involves the whole of society to deal with the matter. This is really the answer, a whole of society approach. But it just cannot be words, because I've heard these words before. Every time there's a spike, all hands on deck, and we hear all of these words. And people are sincere in what they say. I can't say they're not sincere. But this, when it's implemented, has to be broad scale. It has to also be consistent, and it must be driven by scientific data. So therefore, I would say, Cornelius, this is the answer. A comprehensive, broad-based approach, looking at it from a public health perspective, bringing the whole of society together, including political parties, to take the political partisan aspect out of it, so that once and for all, we can have the appropriate platform to deal with the scourge of violence. And let me say, violence, every violent act is not a criminal act. That must be clear. For example, let's say you have a child in a home and you have a parent who is talking down to the child, saying all sorts of negative things to the child. That is not a criminal act. You can't lock up a parent because the parent tells the child that he or she is stupid. But we know that those type of talks affect the brain of the child, the mind of the child, and damages the brain and damages the mind. And a damaged child is a dangerous adult. But that is a violent act that is not a criminal act. So there are two different things. And not all criminal acts are violent acts. White-collar crime. Those are not violent acts, but those are criminal acts. So we are dealing with two things, violence and crime. But what we are dealing with mostly at this particular time, in this particular time, we are dealing with violent crimes. Crimes as a result of violence. And I say all of that to say that we have to understand exactly what we are dealing with so that we can be able to approach it. And I will say this has the great potential to work. And why am I doing a department? And if needs to be a ministry, it is because this should always be part of government's activity. government-led, but people-driven, in the sense that we must always have all hands on deck for the preservation of peace and tranquility and harmony in our federation.
You made mention of white-collar crime, and you said that the focus is violent crime, violent crime in this case. We have criminals who we've known for quite some time have access to weapons that are seemingly more powerful than those of the security forces. Is it a case where in the violent crime, it is possibly being funded through white-collar crime? And what is the Ministry of National Security doing to also address that issue of white-collar crime, and how does it relate to a violent crime in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Right, so as I said, both things can go together. There's no doubt about it, because to fund these things, you need money. At the end of the day, the reason why people are engaged in the drug trade and the gun trade, they're engaged to make money. And they're willing to carry out violent acts to make sure that they can secure whatever money that they're trying to make. So you ask a good question that there might be some white-collar crime behind it. I'm not saying that because we are approaching this violence because that is the issue that we are allowing any other crime to drop behind. Because we have passed laws recently in the parliament to deal with issues of white-collar crime and the laundering of money. If you go back to our recent parliamentary presentation and the laws that we passed, you would recognize that we passed laws governing how foundations should operate, how corporations and so forth should operate, because a lot of the times, if you don't have laws in place, these organizations can be used to launder money. Because at the end of the day, you get your money through these acts, and then you want to wash your money. And people can wash them in businesses and corporations and whatever else. So we have tightened up on those laws as well, where you have to declare more stringent rules around them so we can monitor them and make sure that they're not being used for white-collar crime. So we are not putting it past anybody that once they get their funds through these type of means, that they will now seek to wash it by putting it in, what will be seen as legitimate organizations or institutions. So one, we are strict, and we are getting stricter with the white-collar crime, and we have passed laws recently just to reinforce the point. So we are not allowing white-collar crime to drop behind while we are dealing with violent crime. That is why we say crime and violence, but what is mostly on people's mind at this time, and rightly so, is the violent crimes. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was waiting for you to finish, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Before I ask my question, I have something that I'd like for you to look into, but you can comment on it if you, feel you need to. And this is pertaining to, as you know, we're in the hurricane season, and the water tanks. There's still like hundreds of persons tanks that haven't set up as yet. So I don't know if you're aware of that. If not, you can look into that. All right. But like I said, you can give a comment on it if you feel you need to. All right. But my questions. Now, my first question is, I know some time back, and I think you probably would have spoken it, if I'm not mistaken, with an interview on the SKN with Mr. Huey. It has to do with the government announced I think it's $1,000, I think it was, on investment for kids through the bank, which will be monitored by the government until, if I'm not mistaken, the child reach 18. And also, I think that program more likely will be kicking off next month. Could you go into a little bit of details to that program whereby does the parents have to open an account for the child? Will this program be, directed just to one bank or two bank, or all the banks and the credit union will be a part of the program? My next question is pertaining to the LIFT program. The PAP program is no longer in effect. The LIFT program is the new program. But there's complaints of hundreds of persons trying to get on the LIFT program, even though they meet the requirement, and they're getting a hard time getting on the LIFT program. Those are my questions for now.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me address the issue with the water tanks. What happened with the water tanks? The water tanks came because of climate change, and we predicted that there would be severe drought, and there was drought. The areas that were affected most just happened to be in my constituency, which was the St. Peter's area and the Cayon area. So the reason why we gave the water tank is for people to have a large storage receptacle, so that when the water truck comes around, or the fire truck, they would have a large storage receptacle so they can have water for a couple of days instead of the little buckets. One of the reasons why we couldn't connect it to the main system is that what would happen is that they would draw out the water out of the main system and make the situation worse, in the sense that the tank would always be empty. So people who might have water may not have water, like those at the lower end. If they sometimes have some water, so you only have to help those on the upper end. If everybody draws out the water, there would be no water in the tank, and therefore you would have no backup, no reserve. Maybe if the fire truck comes, there's no water in the hydrant, and the house or the building burns down. And so we had to make sure that we did not create a system where the water can be totally drawn out, because the water was so limited. But for people to have a large receptacle, and for those who are in the most affected areas. So that is why. So I just wanted to clear that as well. So once water becomes very abundant, and I hope it becomes abundant once again, then the connection can be made to take away, to have people fill the tank up from the central system. But if you have your tank and you have a system on your house, you can do it. But we know we can easily send around the water truck and give you water for a few days. So that is why it is like that. If we were to connect it and it takes away the water from the system, that will create a worst case scenario.
Okay, just a follow-up. With the water tanks, how they set them up based upon the information I got from the persons who were setting them up, because I'm from St. Peter's. The tanks, it would fill the water tanks, and you would need pretty much electricity, because it comes with a pump. You will need electricity to plug up the pump in order to use it. So the water would be there until the water pressure goes low, and that's when the tank basically would come into play. So my thing is that there's still a lot of persons who tanks have yet to be.
No. So what I want to explain is this one. Once you have the tank there and it's connected, it's going to draw water from the system. Right. So you are saying that your tank would go low, but remember these areas had no water. So the only place they will get water is to draw all of the water from the system. So it's not like they have water and water go 1 or 2 days. Remember, these were people who had water go 2 and 3 days without water at all. So the only way they would have gotten water is from the system. So if you set it up to the system, it will just draw all the water out the system. And we can't afford for the system to go empty, because if you get a fire in the area and the system is empty, the water hydrant makes no sense. So we have to maintain some level of water in the system for emergency purposes, like a fire. So that is why, because remember, there's no water at all. So it's not like your tank go low. Remember, you had water, places in Cayon, we have resolved most of the problems now, where you had areas 2 and 3 weeks without water. That is why. So, right, okay? So if we connect it, it would only have to pull from the system, and that is why. So probably would have to explain a little bit more of that to the people. So we can't leave the tank empty. because we must have enough in case there's a fire in the area. Now, the other matter you asked about was the LIFT program. The LIFT have, I think, reached up to 5,000 plus. In St. Kitts and Nevis, the population is about, I will say, 53,000. 10% of adults. And you have children making up, let's say, half of the population. So it will be 20% of the adult population in St. Kitts and Nevis only. Yes, 20%. Just think about it. So it means, therefore, that if a government is supplying support to 20% of households in a country that has a fairly high income, what does that tell you? Think about it, 20%. Reach up to 5,300 plus people at one point. So we know we are supporting very broad-based, and sometimes look at the number alone can be beyond. We have the highest minimum wage in the region, highest minimum wage. We have some of the lower taxes in the region. And yet 20% of our adult population can possibly be on a social assistance program. So I just gave those numbers to show that the government is helping significantly. And that is why LIFT is now looking at different ways. So you might only need to help somebody for a year, 6 months, because you can't be on an assistance program for your whole life, because it's not a pension program. That is why we introduced the GAE pension. So hundreds to thousands of people now will get a whole new pension. So they may not need to be on LIFT. For the first time in our country, we have extended pension benefits to the government auxiliary workers that they have been asking for decades. This is to deal with issues of real poverty alleviation, because this is part of your benefits. So it does not depend on any person looking at your special criteria. You just would have had to meet what considered to be reasonable criteria for work you put in. And so hundreds of thousands of people will be helped, are being helped through the pension program. The other thing we did is that we increased the minimum wage. It's only a Labour government that has really increased minimum wages here in St. Kitts and Nevis, because in the 7 years that the previous government was there, they did not increase the minimum wage. They spoke about a livable wage, but they never gave it. We increased minimum wage. Why? So that we don't want people on social assistance program. We prefer people be paid better. Because when you're paid better, you can go to a bank and have a better standing in the bank to get a loan. When you are paid better, you can have more independence. When you are paid better, your social security on retirement is higher. So if you really want to get to the bottom of dealing with poverty, pay people better and give people better benefits on their pension, which we have done. We really believe in empowering people. So with all of this, you have to look at what has this government done to deal with the issue of income of families. This government has increased minimum wage to the highest in the region almost now. This government has expanded pension benefits to workers. This government has subsidized electricity, water, food to keep down inflation, even though we know inflation is an international problem. So we are looking at it from a comprehensive perspective. And it is the philosophy of the labor movement to make workers as independent as possible. So the idea is not to have people on social assistance program, but to provide jobs and pay people best, and also to ensure what can you do with respect to their benefits at the end of the day. So this is going to help our people significantly, and it's helping our people. So we are looking at it from that perspective. If a government big mantra, or any political party big mantra is, I will give you more welfare, I mean, you're not thinking about empowering people. You're thinking about how to control people. But our party believes in fair wages. We believe in pensions. These things have been studied for years and have been shown to be the best ways of alleviating poverty and helping people to live an independent life. Remember, these things have been studied for hundreds of years, because even before you had these labor laws, a 40-work week, a fair wage, pensions, and so forth, workers used to have to depend on the benevolence of rich people and governments. What if you don't have a benevolent government? What if the rich people don't like you today and they hate you tomorrow? What happened to you? So the labor movement said, no, we don't want just that. We want people to have jobs, pay them fairly, give them pensions, and those people will be independent. It will build self-esteem. They'll be motivated to work, and it gives them the best opportunity to build a successful life. So that is why we believe in increased wages, increased salary, pension benefits, and so forth. Those are the hallmark of any labor movement. That is why any country that does not have a labor movement, the workers are suffering, because there is no collective bargaining. There is not the idea of fair wages for work. And again, the issue has to be, no country can advance if the people are not working. That is what the labor movement is about. We are willing to work to build the country, but in return, can you give us the best wage that can be had and the benefits that can be had so that we can have an opportunity to live as well? A lot of things we take for granted today were actually as a result of the labor movement. So we are advancing that agenda. Jobs, fair wages, better pensions and benefits, so that in the end, those who need social assistance will be very minimal. When you have a country or society that needs high social assistance, you have to look at that country because it's unsustainable. That means something is fundamentally wrong. That is what it means. But I'm happy that we're able to give systematic increase in wages across the board and significant pension for the GAE workers, and now looking at other ways of how we can make workers' life better here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So while people talk about the, look at the lift, we look at it comprehensively. Or we know increasing their wages and giving them pensions, these things are much better than passing cash as a social assistance, because at the end of the day, this does not give the worker independence and a true chance of building a strong financial life. Again, why do you think we are coming up with the $1,000 for our children? Because our philosophy is our people must get an opportunity to live the best life they can live. One of the issues in St. Kitts, especially when people are talking about violence and crime, is the issue of poverty. Let's say you have children coming from homes where the parents don't have a lot of money. The parents are trying to get by day, can't afford to put anything aside for the children to have in the future. And so the cycle of poverty can continue. Of course, you have other poverty alleviating programs, such as proper education, tertiary education, growing the economy and so forth so that people can live better. Businesses, expanding businesses and so forth. But what we are doing here is that we are seeking to end poverty once and for all in St. Kitts and Nevis. And it's possible. How? Through education, but financial education, relevant education. So we want when our children leave school, they understand what is a dividend, that a dividend is not paid every year. You look at your profits and that determines your dividend. Or even though I speak of a dividend, I realize that there is a misconception of what a dividend is, especially with respect to the CBI. When you say, I'm going to make an investment into the stock market, what is a stock market? What is an investment? You get the 5% on returns. What does that mean? Of these options that I have, which one is the better one to invest in? Why invest? What is passive income? What is active income? How do I map a budget? How do I plan in the short term, the medium term, and long term in terms of my financial life? None of us here got that education in school in the Caribbean. None of us. We leave school, we get a job, we make money here, and we are going, hitting here, hitting there. We don't understand how to even use that income we have to make money for us while we are sleeping. Well, if everybody is to learn that, well, we can learn it. Our children should be making money while they're studying. So when they leave school, they have money. They don't leave school broke. So what we are saying is that they should get a good chance to start a proper financial life. It doesn't matter how much money their mothers are making, or their fathers. They should know that their child's future is being looked after. And I think this might be one of the ways in which we really, if we can end poverty, we can really hit it a serious blow. Because these children, even if they don't have the money, but they will have their money, when they leave school with this knowledge, they are going to be ranked among the best in the world in terms of understanding finances. Because this will be a program dedicated to give them that knowledge that people have to wait 20 years after school to get. They will come out of school with it. And even while they're in school, they'll be making investments. Investments will be made on their behalf. When they leave school, they're going to understand all these things. They might come to a meeting where they're talking about the fund, and the children might come and say, so why we don't invest in some Apple stocks? Why we don't invest in some Bitcoin? And the children, they're smart. They're going to use their system, and they're going to tell you why they think one option is better than the other. And these are going to be children in school talking at that level, because we're going to ensure. So we are testing the curriculum right now. Some teachers are delivering it. We are seeing if they have any difficulties. So we're going to make it broad-based. All children will have this. And they will have the investments and so forth. And so we are heading towards that. The National Bank is the main institution, but there are other institutions that will participate as well. The children can't take the money out unless they're 18. Of course, they have to do it in tandem with their parents. We are looking for ways to save the parents. Let's say you have parents who want to add in some, or we can do that. We are looking at that possibility. Right. So the system is going to set up with the government and the parent, because the parent has to be involved with the child. However, we will have a structure run by the government, maybe in a statutory body, that manages all of the accounts. All right? So they can't take the money out at all. And then we want that the child will have money on leaving school. So it will take, maybe another 5, 10, 15 years, but we're definitely going to see the benefits. And it's going to be a long-term benefit that the children will have. And then their investments will be down to their whole financial future. All right? Yes.
Mr. Prime Minister, Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Now, quick thing. The founder of Telegram was arrested yesterday. Can you say whether or not he is a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis? And if he is the situation being monitored to see what actions need to be taken if necessary? That's one thing. My other question is relates to the press conference that was hosted by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Denzel Douglas, and he mentioned that on his recent mission to India, that he had signed some memorandum of understanding with regards to textile companies. And we are all for getting additional employment opportunities here. But one of the things that crossed my mind is the idea of signing the memorandum of understanding. Can ministers of government do that on their own, or is it a situation where they get authority from the cabinet prior to leaving the country, or having a draft proposal on hand to review before leaving the country to engage in discussions? Can you tell me what was the situation with regards to Dr. Douglas and the memorandum of understanding?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Good. So with respect to the CEO for Telegram, I've asked the AG who just returned on Monday. He's put in a dossier for me to take a look at. So I don't want to comment on it yet. And I would say he would have that for me very, very, very soon. But preliminary information, of course, is suggesting that, he might very well be a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis through our program. So we are looking at that, okay? Right. Now, the other one with the memorandum of understanding is a non-binding type of document. It doesn't bind the government, doesn't bind the ministry, it's just a memorandum of understanding. And sometimes he also is the Minister of Investments. And so if there's an opportunity where it does not commit the government, but an understanding meaning, look, I'm going to take this back, we're going to have discussions and see what we can do. That is in order. And that happens almost through ministries. Say, okay, there's a memorandum of understanding, there's nothing binding here, and let's see where this would go. So you open up the opportunity and the avenue for meaningful discussions and see where they end up. So it's non-binding and it does not commit the government to anything whatsoever. So that is clear on that. All right? Good. So there's nothing there that put the government at risk at this particular time. Yes.
Brandon Esken, Source. The first question I would like to ask has to do with the matter of crime.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke about crime not always being violent and violence not always being necessarily criminal. But as it relates to something specifically you mentioned, children, and the fact that damaged children become dangerous adults. Funnily enough, we had that conversation on a radio program this morning.
Yes.
I asked the following question because you are approaching crime from a public health perspective. What are you going to do as preventative measures? Because it would appear, at least on the surface, that the approach is to attack the disease, which is the crime. But how are we going to prevent disease from occurring, beginning with children, beginning perhaps with, I don't know if necessarily you always need to legislate everything, but implementing social structures and support systems, perhaps parenting support classes, counseling for parents who might feel overwhelmed so that some of the risk factors associated with developing these criminal minds does not form early?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think the society is discussing it, and the society understands, even from its own experience, what might be some of the factors that lead to people committing crime. So this is a very, very relevant question. We are doing a number of things, and I've been speaking about this since maybe 2022, when I came in, maybe the latter part of 2022, how we're going to deal with it comprehensively. For example, we have recently approved in Cabinet the National Drug Policy, which took some time to develop. It's a robust policy because part of the issue is if you have demand for drugs, drugs will come. Somebody will find a way to do it. And with drugs come guns and so forth. If you can deal with it from that perspective, these persons who might be vulnerable, especially children, through that policy can help to prevent drug addiction. And that's helping it. One, because it does not propel the trade. And secondly, we know that people who use drugs are prone to be victims of violence and also can be perpetrators of violence as well. So that's one, comprehensive. We're actually going to build a building that deals with drug use prevention and also deals with issues of mental health. Significant investment. The second one is that we have just trained 20 plus new family counselors. 20 plus, the highest number ever by far in St. Kitts and Nevis. These family counselors are to go to families that are experiencing stress and difficulties, to intervene, to see how they can resolve these issues. And we intend to train more family counselors because we want them all through the country so that we can capture wherever the issues are. Thirdly, we have hired the most mental health professionals ever in our history. We have mental health professionals at the hospital. Psychiatry has 2 psychiatrists. We have a psychologist who has a PhD. And plus we have employed more persons in the school counseling program, within also the social services in terms of persons who are equipped to deal with issues of mental health. And we are, of course, collaborating with the private sector as far as those type of services are concerned. Again, having these type of professionals to deal with early issues of family dynamics, children who are affected early, to help them to resolve some of that trauma so they don't become dangerous adults, is a significant move in the right direction. So those are two programs we have looked at. Now, in dealing with it from a public health perspective, a comprehensive perspective, within that, in dealing with the social issues, we will be able to help a lot more families and children as well. For example, in the schools, we have increased the number of scout groups across the country. We intend at some point to make it almost mandatory for each child to be in a structured program. That is coming. So we have expanded the Sea Cadets, the Infantry Cadets, the Scouts, and you will see them on display during our independence so that all children can have access to those type of structured programs, so to speak. So we are dealing with it from all levels. Now, again, the reason when it comes to the issue of poverty, of families not having enough resources, a lot of the times children need medical care and attention. The family can't afford it. Stress for the family, stress for the child. So we have introduced the Children's Medical Services Program. That Children Health Program, rather, has helped many children, especially some of them who would have died and caused severe stress for families. The other matter that we are looking at are those who are the victims of violent crimes. How can we intervene through the family counselors to help to ease the psychological burden of the loss because somebody lost their life, and loss because someone is in jail because they perpetrated the crime. That also is being looked at. So we have started the Elevate program, and I've asked the people from Elevate to come forward and explain to the country. Part of Elevate now is counseling. You must go through counseling to be a part of Elevate. Part of Elevate is training. We have people who have graduated from AVEC since they have been in Elevate. And we have more who will go through certified programs, such as the solar panel programs, such as agricultural programs to be part of the 25 by 25. We have structure that you can get counseling, and you have to get counseling, that you will be taught behavioral change, how to rehabilitate you, and then reintegrate you, in a sense, into society. And that program has extended to the prison, not only to the males, but also to the females, because we have a prison program now for the females. Before, females could not come out of the prison. Once they get sentenced, they stay behind those four walls until their time is up. We changed the law. So now they can come out. And we don't let them come out in that type of prison uniform. You would not even recognize them, but they're part of a program to reintegrate them when they leave prison, because most of them are mothers. And if you're going to take a mother out of prison and just put her back with a child without having an intervention, that can make the situation worse. Again, we are protecting the children by going after the mothers. And then a program to develop for children whose parents might be in prison, because they too might be going through their own trauma and so forth. So it is a comprehensive approach, and I mentioned all of that to say that those things are actually being done. 90% of those things, the drug counsel, the family counsels, more psychiatrists, more psychologists, and the interventions to make sure that children are protected as much as possible, those things are being done. Are there gaps? Yes, there are some gaps. But I can say we have a tremendous number of programs that our young people and children can benefit from, even down to parenting skills. That needs to be a fundamental part of it, because most of the issues, they come from many different areas, but the household, the home is where most of the issues are. And if you don't resolve it there, you will always end up with damaged children that can become dangerous adults. For example, in Jamaica, they did the pilot study, and when those mothers who got parental training intervention, teachings, they had a 67% lower chance of having a child that ended up in violent gangs and so forth. That's a significant decrease. And that is because you intervene with the parents who became better parents, and of course they would raise better children. So that is the type of approach that we are going to do. And that is why we want to create a department. That you deal with it for 6 months to a year, the crime go down or the violence go down, and then all of a sudden everybody forget about it and move on to the next. No, this has to be a fundamental part of our governance structure. And that is why we want to make this department. If in the future somebody wants to change it, it's up to them. But hopefully they will keep the essence of the program. But we are making sure that we have a department in government that deals specifically with this. Right now, we have a task force that will become a secretariat, that will become a department, and if needs be, can become a ministry.
Question now is still on that same issue. You mentioned in your opening remarks that of all the invited political parties, the leader of the minority, PLP opposition, did not attend Dr. Timothy Harris or any representative of his organization. I raised that issue again because of the peace program, which I believe now is Elevate.
Right.
And because there has been a lot of public comment on whether or not that very transactional program yielded benefits considering the surge in homicides which has occurred. Now, the contention remains, was it the appropriate thing to do to pay people to do what they should have been doing, which is to behave themselves, as opposed to, for example, the Barbados program, which really and truly just copied what St. Kitts did. They observed how it was operating here and made it better and made it what Elevate has become, which is a program which tackles not just training for these persons, at-risk individuals, skills training, counseling, all of these elements to ensure that you're holistically addressing the issues rather than just making it transactional. And they have seen a reduction in Barbados in homicides and other forms of crime as a result of the implementation and improvement of the St. Kitts and Nevis model. Tell me a little bit more about what outcomes are being seen from Elevate right now and what responses you would give to those persons who said, well, we should have continued with the peace program the way it was operating in the past, given what has happened lately.
Right. So there are a couple of things on that, and I think we need an inquiry into the peace program. And now that you are mentioning that, so that people can know the truth and the facts. Nobody should ever believe that you can pay people to behave. That is a fallacy. You would be extorted, and you would not get to the root of the problem, which is to rehabilitate people and give people a fair chance. That is why I said the program will not even work good for them in the long run. This type of payment had been tried in different places. Jamaica. Let us remember. Trinidad and Tobago. Haiti. Ecuador. San Salvador. El Salvador, rather. To the point where in El Salvador, the president want to maybe bring those previously who participated in that to justice. In Trinidad, remember when a commissioner of police said, no, they will not sanction that, because they remembered what happened when a group tried to take over the government. And in Jamaica, I can tell you, Andrew Holness is strictly against it, because he said to me, he said, PM, do not go down the road ever where Jamaica went. Told me that. And then we had Haiti, which was the quintessential example of pain, to the point where the gangs became so powerful that they felt, no, we can take over the police and the whole country. That is where we were heading. That is why the gang dynamic study from 2022 to 2023 showed that the situation had gotten worse. How can you say you're paying somebody? It doesn't make sense. Then you ask yourself the question, what about you keeping the peace? Should you be paid? It's a matter of fairness as well. And then because you're not rehabilitating anybody, what do you think would happen in the end? If you remember clearly, there were 2 police officers in Freedom who spoke about their work in the schools. And they said there were children in there aspiring to become members of the peace program because they said they ain't got to work and then get money. Infiltrating the minds of our young people that just stay home, relax, and just collect. That was the message being sent. In addition to that, we remember that an ACP mentioned that resources were used to buy better weapons and so forth. That was mentioned. Those were people inside the program. But what we are saying is that we want a program to truly help these young people. Because they deserve the help. Their lives matter. As I say, every life is precious. But we have to do it the proper way, otherwise we'll end up down a road where we can't come from. And therefore, we cannot go down that road. We have the solution that should have been implemented so long ago. We need the whole of society to come together to resolve this matter. You cannot pay money out of this. That will only make it worse. And I ask our people, please look at the prime examples. They initially might see some short-lived period of what they will say a decrease, but it gets worse over time because there is no rehabilitation, and now people have resources to continue the life that they want to continue because nobody took the time to rehabilitate them. And so that is why we really want them to become rehabilitated. That is why we want counseling sessions. That is why we want them to do courses, get jobs, meaningful jobs. That is why we want the whole of society so that we can not have our young people even thinking about going into a gang, thinking about how they can, do something meaningful to enhance our society. Right, good. So that is on it. Let me just say one other thing, where is that program was also set up in a way which embezzled money from the government. The government, the development bank, was on the verge of crashing, $333 million in debt. They took a lot of that money from Social Security, which we had to make sure is stabilized. The report that we did when we did the audit on it is that a check used to be sent from Development Bank to National Bank to send money to Development Bank, hundreds of thousands of dollars per week, $600,000 per week. And that money would be split up in a boardroom, and money would leave the bank in plastic bags and paper bags. That is in the audit report that I presented in Parliament. That's how bad this thing was. This is a criminal enterprise that was set up by the government. And God knows where that money went. These are the things that happened in there. Part of the reason why we saw a drop is that most of the years were COVID years. If you lock down the country for extended period of time, what do you think would happen? Just lock it down. Nobody on the road, nobody can go out. Any violent crimes on the road would drop significantly. And that is why I said in 2022, after I got the report from RSS, there was an expected increase in violence across the region because now you're post-COVID, people were back out, and people get back to what they were getting back to. But these are the things that happen here that we can't go down that road. Otherwise, we can end up like Haiti, where the gangs proliferate so much that they can take over and threaten our country. We can end up where Trinidad ended up. We can end up where Ecuador ended up, where El Salvador ended up. We can't do that, and we should not do that as a country. Let us band together as one people to resolve this matter. We can do it, and we should do it for all of our people. Now, with respect to the PLP, of course, was invited. They received their invitation as all the other political parties in St. Kitts and Nevis. All the other political parties show up except the PLP. And I have my theory behind it. There are some people who think that an increase in crime for a certain period of time can advance their political cause. If you believe that this is an issue that the country should deal with, you have an opportunity to come together and remove the political partisan aspect to it so that we can resolve it. And you are the only one who don't show up and out there complaining. It's like we said, boy, out here we have some issues in the back of the yard here. Let's all come together to resolve it. Everybody will show up except you. And you're out there complaining about body yard need cleaning and so forth. But where were you when everybody said, let's come together to resolve the matter? So you're disingenuous by your action of absence. If you had something to say and good ideas, come. I know this was something fairly new for us to do, that a prime minister will call all the opposition and say, look, let us come together and deal with this matter once and for all. It's not something you see every day. You must agree. Not even the Republican and Democrats in the US come together and decide they will do it. But here in St. Kitts and Nevis, I call because this is a national issue, and this issue can only be resolved by the country coming together. Anybody else say anything otherwise, they are fooling the people. All they will put in is a plaster over the sore here and there. And they hid from the people for a long time, and bad, you must remember, When we used to ask if this program exists, they used to say to you that it does not exist. The former Prime Minister himself said in Parliament that the program does not exist. All the time, the money was being embezzled to the tunes of millions upon millions of dollars that now have Development Bank in trouble. Social Security now has resolved its matter. So the troubles of the government were hidden in these areas because normally in a budget, nobody would highlight them. So you would say, okay, the central government has money. How can you have money when your development bank is in debt $333 million? How can you have money when your Social Security needs help? But of course, Social Security is stable once again. And I want to thank all those who work hard with this government to make it that way. Social Development Bank borrowed over $100 million from Social Security and couldn't pay it back. 8 to 10% of the total holdings of Social Security. If Development Bank fails, that would have troubled Social Security significantly and affect the lives of everybody in St. Kitts and Nevis because the money was embezzled for the so-called peace program. So how could that be the solution? Putting a whole bank at risk and putting people's pension at risk. That would have caused a total social upheaval, which would have made all the matters worse. Because now the innocent who were standing by, which is the vast majority of people, would have had to now suffer, along with those who are on the program, because they would have suffered too. These are the facts. The facts are there. And I tabled in Parliament the audit of the Development Bank, where the facts can be seen by an independent audit organization from Canada.
Just to clarify on certain things that you have just said, Prime Minister. Now, you mentioned words, you use words like embezzled and so on. Where is this leading to? Because you're essentially talking about criminal acts, and criminal acts require legal solutions and by the court involved. So at what point will we see the government take action? Because as it is right now, they're all allegations. You may say, well, we have the evidence, but until a court rules on it, that's the situation that we are dealing with.
Right, so let me just say that there's a court case surrounding this matter. The court case is going to be very likely called up in September sizes. And so I don't talk much beyond what I say because of that court case that is to come that would also examine this aspect. Multiple things can come out of this, but the first one will be coming in September that will deal with the Development Bank and the past CEO manager of the Development Bank, who is the brother of the past Prime Minister, who was also on Social Security Board. One big link here, Ministry of Finance. Minister of Finance, Minister responsible for Social Security and Development Bank, and brother who is the CEO for Development Bank and on the board for Social Security. And all the debt of the country was hidden over there because nobody took the time to read any audit. But again, no audits were available. The last time there was a Development Bank audit was 2018. The only banking institution in the country that did not do an audit through COVID was the Development Bank. And the reason why they stopped the audits in 2018 was because they did not want the people to see this. Because you all would have picked up long ago that the Development Bank was being used as a conduit to embezzle money. Just the fact that you stop audits is a big red flag. Just that fact alone. You have an institution and you're going to determine no audits can take place here. If you go to a bank, Mr. Bad, and you say, I want to invest in this bank or bank some money, and you hear that bank doesn't have any audit, you're going to be asking yourself, so why they don't want to audit the bank? What they're hiding from me? As a matter of fact, in the United States of America and this jurisdiction, you cannot function as a registered bank or company without an annual audit. And if you're a public company, you have to post online your numbers so people can look at them independently. Go online, you can see Google's number from last year. You can see Apple's number from last year. They're there because that is part of a good governance system. But here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the minister and the past CEO and the past minister are brothers. And they decided that no external audit, independent audit, and development bank. And now we took over and realized development bank is over $333 million in debt. But the other aspect of it, Mr. Bat, what makes it bad, Social Security was forced to lend money to the development bank, knowing that no audits were done. There is no institution. They were forced to do it. So you put Social Security at risk. You had no audits at all to say where you're at. Since we came in, we did a forensic audit to get an idea of where we're at. But here you are, no independent audit, and you force Social Security to lend so much money to that institution. And then stop all payments to Social Security during COVID. All payments stopped. Putting Social Security more at risk. But today, the bank is more stable, Social Security more stable, and Social Security is a much better position. However, we will speak about the reform at some point. So they hid the troubles of the country in the development bank and shut down the audit. So, Mr. Bat, whether somebody agrees with me or not, I think the reasonable person has to ask the reasonable question. So why is it you did not want to do any audit? Why is it you stopped the audit? Just ask that question. Why a bank would not want to do an audit? Unless you're hiding something. And it is a good assumption. You must say if you don't do an audit, you're hiding something. And what we found? Bank in debt of over $333 million. And this is before COVID, Mr. Bad. So nobody can just say it's COVID. 2018 was before COVID. 2019 was before COVID. So we know that that decision was made. And I have to make the reasonable assumption because people wanted to hide from the people of St. Kitts and Nevis what was taking place in that. And so we are left with a big hole to fill, a big hole to fill in the development bank and to protect the Social Security as a result. So some of the decisions that have to be made are not going to be easy decisions. For example, we had to pump money into Social Security, into development bank to uphold it from the central government because there's no institution around the world that would lend $1 to the development bank because they're saying, show me your audit. The first thing they're asking for is show me your audit. It's just like if you go for a loan, they're going to say, what is your income? What is your credit score? What is this? What is that? Because the bank wants background information to determine your risk profile to make a decision. But here, Social Security was forced to lend without an audit. Even if he had a bad audit, he has something to work with. And here, other institutions were being asked to lend, and they said no. So right now, we can't approach any institution. All they're asking for in the audit. Thank God we're doing the audit now, but the audits go back to 2018, 2019. So it's going to take a while to get what the real position is. But we know the bank is in debt at least $333.
Just two more questions from me, Mr. Prime Minister. The first related to capital projects, the status of the Bastia High School, where we with actually starting construction, and the Climate Smart Hospital. And the second question is, what is the status of the fair share agreement or arrangement between St. Kitts and Nevis? I think the last update had to do with the World Bank working out that arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With respect to the capital projects, I can say that the hospital is well on its way. They are doing soil testing, all the preliminary work. They're drawing the plan presently, completing that. Because again, to get such a large project off, for those who are in project management knows that it takes some time. But we are really at work is going on. It's just that shoveling ground you will see very soon in the next few months. And that would be a project that would take about 2.5 to 3 years and would employ hundreds of people. Right? So that project is well on its way. When it comes to the Bastia High School, it's very advanced as well, I can say. Very, very advanced. And I would also ask the Minister of Education to give an update on it in his minister's statement. So I can say the Bastia High School is very, very advanced. About 2 months ago, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Education, presented the schematics in Parliament. He gave an update then. Since then, there have been approvals and so forth. And I know that it is very, very advanced. So that one is very advanced. With respect to the World Bank, we had a hiccup that there was a shift in leadership in the World Bank. And so the FS went back to the World Bank, and the World Bank now is committed to making sure that the work is completed. So that work is still ongoing. I really want that, because this would be an assessment from a reputable organization that will inform us exactly as to what we need to do. So when it comes to capital project, I will say, let me go through them for you, if you don't mind. Smart homes, on their way. Right? On the way. The hospital, on the way as well. The school, on the way as well. The solar plant or solar farm, on the way as well. There are some others I will mention, not yet, but they are definitely coming on the way. We have about 2 other major investments. One will be an agriculture major investment that will also come. We have an investment for the airport, that is advancing significantly as well. I'm saying that when, in the next few months, I'm almost certain that we'll run out of construction workers here. I'm almost certain. I didn't speak about them, as you know me by now. I don't talk about projects unless they're at the point of being non-reversible. And just looking at this, the hospital that will need a couple hundred workers, the solar farm that will need a couple hundred workers, looking at the farming project, the hospital project, the school project, the housing project. You know, right now we have hundreds of houses that are approved. And if you take 4 workers per house, just multiply that. Easily you're talking a few hundred just for the housing. And that will go on for about a number of years as well. So why did these projects? Because if you look, these are major projects. And because we met no project on the way, none, we had to build all of these projects basically from scratch. The school, which we know, not $21 million spent and not even a brick laid. That again is a big scandal. Nothing. The solar project, you know, we had to totally revamp it because it was going nowhere. And we had to almost start from scratch for that. There was no agricultural project, there was no hotel project, there was no hospital project, there was no housing project, there was nothing there. We had to put all of this together in 2 years so that we would create significant number of jobs for people here in St. Kitts and Nevis, in the construction field, the technical field, and also, as I said, we have a number of other major investment projects that we will announce when the ink is dried and they cannot be reversed.
Prime Minister, 2 matters. At least 2 persons within Parliament are named in the MSR RICO lawsuit. Now, they would have declared to the Integrity Commission a certain level of financial information. And the question is then, these persons having to hire high-paid lawyers to defend their interests, will they be taking these funds out of the declared accounts to the Integrity Commission, or do they have to now refile information to the Integrity Commission to ensure that they are covered in the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis? Because if they don't, and they're actually expending funds, then there's a problem with regards to the integrity in public life situation.
Right. With respect to the integrity in public life and the commission, that commission is totally independent. I cannot influence them. It would be interference because, I'm subjected to it as well. But there's a legal framework, and I'm sure that they are, conducting the activities within that legal framework. The commission, you have to file periodically. Or let's say I filed this month and that was what was in my account. And over the year I did something and I used money. When I file again, I have to file and say, well, this is what my account is. So it's not filing once and get away. You have to file periodically. Now, if the Integrity Commission at any point suspects anything, the Integrity Commission can write to you and ask you for additional information. So that is all within the scope of work of the Integrity
And do you think at the moment that the Integrity Commission has enough financial resources to do its work properly? Because I think there's only one individual who actually will be perusing all of these documents, and it's quite a lot. So in terms of staffing requirements, we also require additional sources of funds from the government. Are you prepared then to invest further in the proper capitalization of the Integrity Commission?
Right, so the Integrity Commission, it has its own budget. Remember, under the previous administration, they refused to give the Integrity Commission the budget that it needed. And a matter of fact, the law was not even properly implemented to its completion so that they could carry out the work. Remember, it was just window dressing, so to speak. Remember that clearly. The first chair, I think, he said he had to use his own personal credit card to even get some basic stuff for office. If I remember clearly, it was maybe lawyer Damian Kelsey, was it him? And we actually came in, make sure that the law had teeth. People had to file for the first time in history. And not only that, we gave the commission a budget. So I think if there's ever more work to be done, I think the commission would approach and ask for that. But the commission is independent. It does its own work. There's not going to be any interference from my perspective. I don't know if there's a connection with MSI and the Integrity Commission. But whatever there is that the commission deems fit to go after, I think the commission.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up. St. Peter's bus shed situation where there's no bathroom facility or shed. Just a quick follow-up on that.
Yes. So basically, we are seeking to get the land that is there. We have been in touch with the owner for the land, whether we're going to lease or buy it. So we're just waiting to complete that legal process. But we are really hoping to get that land. Because when it comes, we are trying to see where we can get land to build that facility, and we have been pursuing that for some time. We have not completed it as yet, but we hope to complete it. Because I would have liked to see the facility for Christmas, for example, when there's increased use during that busy period. But we are pursuing it, and I am pursuing it. As you know, we are doing the whole St. Peter's Road, restructuring it, paving it, make it as modern as possible. We have bus stands up in St. Peter's proper, but now we need a bus stand in our bus station in Basti itself, as you know. So, I grew up in St. Peter's, and I, used to take the bus there, and not to have a bathroom facility there is really not the best situation. The patrons and the bus drivers, they deserve a facility, and I'm pushing as much as possible to see how I can get that done. Yes.
And I only have one last question, which has to do with the fact that you said quite a bit with respect to the Development Bank,
Yes.
Social Security, the possibility of a case coming up in the September assizes, which I certainly shall be keeping my eye on.
Yes.
More than that, though, you mentioned that there might be, or you may now have to consider a public inquiry. The question I have to ask is, if court cases are coming out of this, is an inquiry something we want to do now or hold off on? And the reason I ask is this. Oftentimes, these inquiries are so thorough, and we all know that coming out of public inquiries, you can't use anything to pursue a criminal case. The police now would have to investigate and come up with new evidence to pursue before the courts. Given how thorough they can be, are we waiting to see perhaps if this is a consideration? Let's see what the courts do, and then we go back? Because I think we all would agree, if with the information you've revealed, $600,000 a week coming out in plastic bags, those are serious allegations, and the people deserve to know.
Yes.
They may not get the extent of that information out of a court case because of nature of how the criminal system works. But if an inquiry is to come, when?
Yes, but that is a very good question, and that is partly why we have not rushed into it either. Because at the end of the day, that information, I think, needs to be presented in a court of law. And I think that information needs to lead to how can we get back our money? Those are the questions that have to be asked. And so because you have an ongoing court case, and I know that, our people, they're hearing me say this all the time, and they're saying, when is it? But I just gave most likely when the case is going to come up. And because of the nature of that, it limits sometimes how much information you can give, so you don't prejudice the case, for one, and you don't put the case in jeopardy. But at the same time, because some of the information you may not give all of it, people are using that to say that there was nothing. And that is the sad part of it, that they're using that aspect of not being able to give everything because of a pending court case as a premise to say, I'm just talking and nothing really happened there. But I've said it. And nobody can challenge that. It is the truth. And the people of St. Kitts know, because I remember when the bank used to be open on a Sunday and up to midnight, they know. So people now can't pretend that they don't know. So I consider that all to be a criminal enterprise. But I would say that the young people deserved better. They deserve the opportunity to really be rehabilitated and get back into society. I will support that, because I will never give up on the young people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and I'll never give up on our boys or our men.
Thank you, media houses. We'll now allow the Prime Minister to do his final wrap-up.
Right, so thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to say to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, thank you for joining me this afternoon. We continue to deal with a number of critical matters. Of course, the issue of crime and violence, and we have made significant steps to secure St. Kitts and Nevis and to continue having a peaceful society. We had our first stakeholders engagement. Presently, the task force is having a meeting that I was engaged in and which a little bit late to this round table. That, of course, is high priority. I want to thank the security forces for the work that they are doing presently. I want to encourage you, people of St. Kitts and Nevis, all of us, to really be a part of dealing with this issue. It is the only way that this issue can be dealt with. All of us at the table, all of us doing our part. And I want to ask the media and the Media Association to do its part as well. You have the opportunity to write articles, research information, and just use your voices and your spaces and your platform to condemn crime and violence and to tell those who are the perpetrators to leave crime and violence behind. It destroys them, it destroys their families, it destroys their communities. So use your platform as well. For all hands on deck means wherever we are doing our part to deal with the issue. If you're in a community and you see a child going down the wrong road, admonish the child. Seek out the parents. Let's get back to a village must be able to raise a child. Parents alone can't raise children. But of course, it starts in the home and is the most important. But if you are doing a good job at home as a parent and you are sending your child out into a society that is not taking care of your child, you might have got good parents who end up with a child that is so far away from the principles they're learning at home. So that is why all of us have to band together. None can be excluded. And I will continue to call on society so that all of us can sit at the table and come up with meaningful solutions to deal with this scourge. It is government-led, but society-driven. It is the only way to deal with this issue, and I don't care which society anyone lives in. Also want to say that on the matter of the CBI, I wanted to bring the issue of the CBI here today. We had done a significant amount of work to save the CBI. Of course, it affected us, but we think we are now in a better position to get back to where we should be. I also want to stress the idea that the government, true financial situation was hidden in the debt of the development bank. And that is why they shut down any audits so that it can be hidden, but it's all exposed. This administration would have to make challenging and tough decisions to protect all of our people and our institutions. And I will make those tough decisions. I promised it before the elections, and I promise it even today. But this government has also been responsive to our people. The highest minimum wage, pension plan for our GAE workers, investing and subsidizing electricity, water, food, and other things, gas as well, so that we can deal with this scourge of inflation. Investing heavily in water, $50 million desal plant. We find a government without water, sufficient water, and without electricity. We had to buy new generators, and we have invested $50 million in new generators. We have invested monies in water. Basic things were left undone, yet we heard of surplus after surplus. Surplus after surplus, but no water. Surplus after surplus, but no generators for our power plant. And if we can't have the basic things, how can we build a country? And that is why I'm asking all of our people to really support the initiative to establish a sustainable island state. We can do it. We will work hard to implement it so that you can be the beneficiaries. So with that, I want to say to you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, keep hope alive. This is a great country, a good country, even with the challenges. It's life and there will be challenges, but we can face our challenges. And I want to thank you very much for your continued support. May God bless all of you. And thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for making yourself available to engage with the press and keep the citizens informed. Allow me to acknowledge and extend our gratitude to the broadcasting corporations that facilitated this episode of the Roundtable, bringing it live to the public and our citizens in the diaspora. We appreciate the support of ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, Freedom FM, Vaughan Radio, Win FM, Sugar City FM, CBN Network, SKN Newsline, TVC Channel 40, and Tel TV in St. Martin. Your assistance has been invaluable in ensuring that the government of St. Kitts and Nevis can effectively keep all citizens informed. To the media present here today, a special thank you. To all listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. This has been the Roundtable with the Honorable Dr. Terrance Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you.